Thank you for attending the webinar brought to you by University Putra Malaysia under the course of EMG 5107 Lifecycle Thinking. The content presented today is Organizational Lifecycle Assessment, O-LCA. We are pleased to introduce you the presenters of the day. They are Ms. Wong Ying, Ms. Chia Yumi, and Ms. Wang Xiaozhuo. The presentation will be split into 3 parts, covered by the presenters respectively. This is the first part of O-LCA. In this part, we are going to discuss the definition, introduction, history, and the summary of the first mover. Lifecycle assessment, LCA, is a quantitative tool to evaluate the impact of a product, a system, or an activity on the environment, economic and social aspects. It takes into account a comprehensive set of different aspects and potential impacts of a product over its entire life cycle. From the beginning stage of a product, such as raw material extractions, to different phases until the end of the product's life. It also covers the stages if the product is recycled. There are 3 categories of studies you can choose for the LCA, depending on the business nature and the resources you have. The first type of assessment, cradle to grave. It is a full assessment that includes all the stages of the life cycle. It includes the resource consumptions and emissions of the use phase and the end of life phase, which is likely to be waste disposal. The second type of assessment, cradle to gate. It is an assessment of a partial product life cycle from resource extractions, which is cradle, to the factory gate, that is, before it is transported to the consumer. Other stages are well aware, but the assessment is only focused in one stage. The third type of assessment, cradle to cradle. It is very similar to the first type of assessment, but cradle to cradle considers a circular system, which the product will not be discarded, but will be recycled and utilized back into the cycle. It is a system that is not only efficient, but also essentially waste-free. Here comes a short question for you. Is O-LCA a new tool being introduced recently? The answer is no. O-LCA has been introduced at least 50 years ago. A little explanation about the history of LCA. The draft concept was first performed by Harold Smith in 1960s, who was a project manager for the Douglas Point nuclear generating station. He calculated the energy requirements to produce the chemical intermediates. The concept was continued to be utilized for many companies until 1990s, when Kyoto Protocol requires nations to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases to a certain level. That was the time when most of the companies adopted organization lifecycle assessment. O-LCA refers to the application LCA into organization. It means the lifecycle approach from a product level to a whole company level. O-LCA is more complex because the organizations may have several products, different departments, and may involve in different regions. This also refers that a large part of the impacts can reside outside the organization's gate. O-LCA uses a life cycle perspective to compile and evaluate the inputs, outputs, and potential impacts of the activities associated within the beyond the gates of the organizations. O-LCA includes not only the facilities of the organizations but also upstream and downstream activities. Typically, LCA includes 4 stages: setting a goal and scope, secondly, collecting and inventorying necessary data, thirdly, conducting impact assessment, which is a stage to collect additional information to understand the significance of the data, lastly, interpreting the results. If it sounds really complicated to you and you do not know where to start with, you may refer to the most established tool for the lifecycle family, the 3 ISO 14040 series standard, which act as standards and guidelines for organizations to implement LCA. The first standard, ISO 14040, Environmental Management. It was published in 1997 to define the correct process of O-LCA. It is like an introduction to the concept. In the document, it describes the 4 phases, principles, and framework of LCA. Second standard, ISO 14044, Environmental Management Lifecycle Assessment Requirements and Guidelines. It was published in 2006 to provide a basic guideline and specify requirements for LCA. For example, the document stated the operator shall communicate the LCA result to the public through third-party reports. It means that you might need to produce a public report for LCA management with the help of third-party assurance. The third standard, ISO 14072, Life Cycle Assessment. It is a technical standard published in 2014 to provide additional requirements and guidelines for an effective application of the 2 standards mentioned in front. It basically provides more detailed guideline. It mentioned about the methodology to apply O-LCA, benefits, system boundary, considerations, and limitations. Now, you have slightly understood what O-LCA is. Let's answer short questions. Which organizations can apply O-LCA? A. Local organizations with small scale. B. Local organizations with large scale. C. Multinational organizations with small scale. D. Multinational organizations with large scale. E. All above. The answer is E. All above. O-LCA is applicable to organizations of all sizes, both public and private, all sectors with variable product portfolios such as car, food, electronic, packaging, clothing, and chemical. The term of organization is a person or group of people that has its own functions with responsibility, authorities, and relationship to achieve its objective. In fact, all the big companies go through the same growth stages, regardless of the industry. Even McDonald's started from a small shop. The life cycle of any organization found presented in the life cycle model display in the bell curve. To avoid reaching decline or death stage soon, O-LCA shall be applied as it helps the company to reach continuous improvement and sustainability goal. Now we come to one of the best examples of the first mover of O-LCA, Volkswagen, which we commonly known as Volkswagen. The automobile company is committed to reducing the carbon dioxide output of the European new car fleet to emissions below the threshold of 120 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer by 2015, and furthermore to 95 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer by 2020. As early as 1996, the company was the first car maker to prepare and publish a life cycle inventory (LCI) for the Golf 3. Volkswagen defines the serious risks associated with climate change as the central challenge, and therefore its environmental focus is on carbon. In the assessment, the company has compared the emission between their diesel car and electric car. In comparison, diesel car emits 140 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer on average over its entire life cycle, while the electric car only reaches 119 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer. Volkswagen found most of the emissions occur during the use phase. Diesel reaches 111 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer. Electric drive emits only 62 gram carbon dioxide per kilometer. But the carbon emissions of electric car is higher than diesel car due to the battery productions and the complex extractions of raw material. Volkswagen is not calculating the carbon footprint of the use phase only, but also the emissions generated by the extractions of raw materials, the productions of components, and the assembly are included in the production. Assessment is also done on the use phase, includes both the emissions of the fuel and electricity supply, and especially those of vehicles operations over 200,000 km. The company also focuses on recycling and dismantling, as they are trying to have higher potential savings through recycling and calculating the carbon produced in the recycling process. From this example, we can see that O-LCA is complex. The report stated that the LCA of the tire take hundreds of factors into considerations, which involve 14 processes. Volkswagen assures that in first place of the carbon dioxide emissions of the supply chain, the entire manufacturing process and logistics have been partially reduced and using green power. This explicitly includes the productions of the high-voltage battery. The company is validating the decarbonization approach by confirming that the players in their supply chain, such as manufacture and delivery of the electric cars to the retailer, are independently certified as net carbon neutral. Now we come to our last questions of part 1. What are the aspects being assessed by O-LCA? A. Environment. B. Economy. C. Social. D. All of above. The answer is D. All of above. O-LCA is an analytical tool designed to assess not only to environmental aspects but also to social and economics. McDonald's is a very good example in using O-LCA to improve its sustainability performance. In the sustainability report in 2014, besides of outlining the carbon footprint at 71%, social and economic responsibilities are also discussed. For social dimensions, McDonald's is protecting the human rights. In 2020, McDonald's has reached 29% in diversities, but they aim to increase women representations into 45% and underrepresented groups such as Asians and Black into 35% by 2025. Economic aspect, McDonald's is committed in supporting local producers and manufacturers as their preference. For example, McDonald's Australia has spent $600 million in buying Australian products. In mobile phone as an example, LCT is a concept to determine all the stages of a phone from beginning to the end. As a consumers, we bought the phones from the retails. In fact, the phones undergoes many stages before it reaches the retail shops. This kind of thinking is known as life cycle thinking. O-LCA, however, is a tool applying LCT in calculating, analyzing the impacts brought by the input and output of a stage in the life cycle. O-LCA is a lot complex because it involves of many LCAs. This is because most of the companies have different types of products. Even Apple's, they have iPhone, iPad, and iWatch. In overall, LCA is a tool to analyze one stage of the products, while O-LCA analyzes all products, not only the facilities of the organizations, but also the downstreams and upstreams activities. Chocolate has been a symbol of happiness and joy. However, when it comes to taking responsibility for the working and environmental conditions along the supply chain, the truth behind is saddening. The last thing we want to know about chocolate is that producing chocolate relates to environmental pollutions, child labors, low revenue, and etc. As a consumer, we can use our buying power in selecting some chocolate brands that practice O-LCA. You may choose chocolate brands with certifications, such as UTZ. With this label, it means that the company is doing internal and external assessment on their impacts. They are likely verified to be environmentally friendly, social responsible, and brings economic benefits along the supply chain, including the farmer, traders to manufacturer. If you are born before 1990s, I'm pretty sure that you have seen a glass bottle of Coca-Cola, but since when it becomes a plastic bottles, and why Coca-Cola has to change their packaging? In 1970s, Coca-Cola decided to quantify the raw materials and fuels they use and environmental consequences of the entire life cycle of a package, from extractions of raw material and disposal. The technique they use is known as REPA. Shockingly, Coca-Cola found out using plastic bottles is saving more energy in shipping due to the light weight of plastic. REPA has then become the foundations of O-LCA in the future. While O-LCA is no longer a confidential info for many companies, but becomes a marketing instrument to many giant brands. You can now easily find the LCA information on the website. And that's the first part of OLCA. Thank you for watching.